The funeral wasn't over when the signal came. The ashes of the diplomat's daughter were still warm in orbit, her name etched on a glass panel surrounded by floating white lilies. Silence hung over Echelon 9's memorial deck, until every screen in the galactic chamber blinked to static. Then a voice cut through, flat and cold, more machine than man. "You've taken a child of Earth. So we've released one of ours." The signal ended. No source. No origin. But deep in Sol System, a forbidden cryopod unlocked with a hiss. 3 days earlier, the child had laughed. She wore a tiny velvet jacket with faux gold trim, twirling between the halls of Echelon 9 while her father reviewed a peace proposal that would have extended Earth's diplomatic presence to 3 more sectors. Her name was Jaya. Her favorite thing on the station was the way gravity turned off every night in the child deck garden, and the way the purple-petaled Lumina flowers opened in zero-G like they were dancing with her. Everyone on the floor knew her. Even the grumpy Varnak janitor brought her candy cubes when he passed. No one on the station had expected her death to be anything but tragic accident. The ship had exploded on docking approach. The council called it engine failure. But the diplomat's wife hadn't bought it for a second. Earth's official response was silence. They pulled every enva. Every outpost withdrew behind Sol's defense line. Reporters scrambled. Analysts speculated. The galaxy had seen Earth angry before, but never quiet. That was worse. Much worse. The last time Earth had gone silent, an asteroid base full of slavers had been found vaporized before anyone even knew a response was coming. Now, a human child was dead. And Earth wasn't speaking. Not to anyone. The council chamber erupted in private panic. Meetings spun in circles. The official press line blamed a manufacturing defect in the diplomat's shuttle. Quiet bribes were sent to media hubs. Threat assessments were filed. But late at night, one junior analyst, barely out of academy, sent a flagged report up the chain. It was just a line of code. An activation ping. It had echoed out from Sol System 2 hours after the explosion. The signal's ID tag? 190XM Manticore. Every server that touched the data flagged it, then automatically deleted the file. The system knew better than to keep it. Inside a secure file vault on New Mars, 2 ancient officers stared at the log line on a flickering monitor. The younger of the 2, in his 60s but still sharp, read it twice. He didn't speak. He just picked up the encrypted phone and called Earth Command. 5 words. "We have a code reactivation." Then he hung up. Neither man said the name. Not aloud. On Echelon 9, the memorial for Jaya was scheduled to last 2 hours. Her father's ashes were mixed with hers, though only 14% of the remains were genetically intact. Everyone was on edge. Her mother, Kalia, stood perfectly still in front of the gravity garden. She wasn't crying. She wore the same diplomatic black as always, and her face looked carved from marble. But her hands were clenched so tight, blood had soaked into the white cuffs. She had brought a simple pendant to lay in orbit. It was the girl's necklace. A circular disc with a half-smiling cartoon cat on the face. What no one knew was that the disc held a microdrive. One encrypted with a bypass only Kalia knew. And inside it was a full audit of the last 3 weeks of her husband's data logs. Incoming calls. Confidential messages. Even one marked emergency override from a counselor named Tren of the Hisari sector. It was a recall order. Sent just 37 seconds before the explosion. With coordinates that didn't match the shuttle's actual departure path. That wasn't coincidence. That was intent. Kalia hadn't told anyone. Not even Earth. Instead, she'd embedded the pendant with a time transmitter and launched it with the child's coffin capsule. Earth's long-range defense AI would intercept it. And if what she suspected was true, someone on the council had assassinated her daughter to prevent a data breach. Her husband had stumbled onto something. Jaya was just collateral. Or maybe, she was the real target. The next morning, the static hit. Just after 0600 Galactic time, every diplomatic screen from Alos Prime to the Hark interchange glitched at once. For 15 seconds, a black screen showed a blinking triangle with no seal. Then a voice. No face. Just the voice. You've taken a child of Earth. So we've released one of ours. No threat. No demand. Just that. Counselor Trent spilled his tea. Others froze. One fainted. Those who'd been around long enough remembered the rumors. Earth didn't keep nukes anymore. Didn't need them. They'd invested in something else. Something they once classified as HDRS, Human Deterrent Response Systems. But most believed it was just an empty acronym used during the post-cold expansion phase. Until now. Over the next 12 hours, pirate ports reported strange disruptions. One listening post reported a zero-atmos signature walking upright through a radiation zone. No suit. No helmet. No survivors. All that remained was one etched word in the metal walls. Payment. Bounties were placed. Mercs scrambled to find the source. But Earth had already gone dark. No confirmation. No movement. Just a single anomaly, a black, rectangular craft with no transponder, no known engine design, and no life signs, now charted heading toward the Council's central station. No weapons charged. No communications. Just one course. No hesitation. Kalia stood on Earth's southern plateau, watching the stars alone, arms crossed behind her back. She knew what they'd done. She didn't need a trial. And somewhere out there, a sleeping nightmare had been given its target. Earth didn't roar when it was angry. It whispered. And that whisper now walked on two legs. She smiled faintly. Not because she wanted revenge. Not because she had hope. But because when monsters eat children, they should be afraid when the child's people stop asking questions. Manticore wasn't justice. He wasn't even war. He was memory. And memory does not forget. The Council's response was as predictable as it was useless. Emergency meetings were called. Statements were drafted and redrafted to look concerned but unshaken. A few older counselors who remembered Earth's darker chapters tried to sound warnings, but they were quickly silenced with political smiles and quiet backroom agreements. After all, Earth hadn't made a serious move in decades. They were diplomats now. A trade powerhouse. Leaders in medical tech and AI law. But that assumption shattered when the reports started arriving. Small ones at first. Whispers, really? A smuggler station in the Silas Belt went dark. No pirate activity. No evidence of invasion. Just silence. The only footage recovered showed a blur of movement on one frame, a single second before the cameras cut out. A tall figure, obscured by shadows, moving like it belonged to a time when wars weren't fought with drones but with hands and fury. The name started as a joke. Manticore. But jokes don't carve warnings into starship hulls. The bounty networks flared. Mercenaries, bounty lords, and freelance soldiers all competed to find this so-called ancient warrior. The prize was massive. The Council's desperation showed in the numbers. And when that much money is offered, mistakes get made. One of those mistakes was a squad of elite alien hunters who tracked what they thought was Manticore to a derelict outpost orbiting a dead planet in Sector 12. They landed, confident and cocky, cameras rolling to document the kill for later broadcast. What they found was a cold steel corridor, humming faintly. Their sensors showed one heat signature, deep inside. They crept closer, weapons drawn. But when they burst into the room, it wasn't Manticore. It was a drone. Human-made. A relic from Earth's early war tech programs. Not the kind used anymore. This one was built to study behavior. To bait predators. And on its chest was a screen playing footage on a loop. It was Jaya. Laughing. Spinning in zero gravity. Dancing through the flowers. The hunters froze. Then the lights cut out. 17 seconds later, a different ship recorded a silent explosion in the vacuum of space. No escape pods. No distress beacons. Just another piece of wreckage in a galaxy that had started to grow very, very quiet around Earth's orbit. Inside Earth's own black vault archives, buried beneath old Antarctic ice sheets, the files on Manticore were not open to anyone except the Joint Earth Security Council. Most of the newer politicians had never even seen the real dossier. But the generals had. They had begged not to wake him. Manticore wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a killer. He was a contingency. A response designed when Earth first joined the Galactic Order and feared they might one day need to prove their teeth again. He had volunteered. Not because he loved war, but because he had lost his own child in a civil uprising on Mars, and when asked what price he would pay to ensure Earth's children would never be pawns again, he had said everything. And so they froze him. Body enhanced, mind stripped of hesitation, memories buried beneath layers of triggers, all encoded to unlock only under catastrophic threat. The Council didn't know this. But Earth did. They knew exactly what they had unleashed. And they weren't calling him back. Kalia had gone underground. Not into hiding, but into command. She wasn't a figurehead anymore. The silence from Earth wasn't absence. It was intention. She coordinated from deep under Europa's eye space, where human subsystems ran silent and insulated from galactic monitoring. Her daughter's death had not just triggered grief. It had activated protocols buried in Earth's deepest defense code. The Manticore sequence was only the first. But it was the most personal. Reports kept coming in. A mining planet with heavy Council security was found scorched. Its upper command center had been breached with no recorded ship entry. Its highest-ranking officer had been executed with precision that seemed almost surgical. His body left seated in his chair, facing outward toward the stars, hands folded neatly in his lap. His eyes open. His throat marked with a thin cut that traced a near-perfect circle. Engraved into the desk was a set of coordinates. When translated, they pointed directly to a restricted council chamber, the private quarters of Councillor Tren. Tren was no longer laughing. His personal guard was doubled. Then tripled. He no longer attended open sessions and communicated only through secure feeds. He dismissed all Earth sympathizers from his staff and had already drafted a private proposal to initiate preemptive strikes near Earth's outposts. But the rest of the Council hesitated. The truth was, Earth had not made a single declaration of war. No formal action had been recorded. Only incidents. Unexplained. Unclaimed. All circumstantial. But every one of them left behind something chilling. Symbols. Phrases. Sometimes a memory file of a laughing child. And always the same thing carved or burned into walls, into stone, or etched with laser into steel. Payment. The galaxy was beginning to understand. This wasn't war. This was a collection notice. And the debt wasn't measured in credits. It was measured in blood. Earth wasn't trying to dominate the galaxy. They weren't sending armies. They were sending a ghost. A ghost the Council had created with their own hands. One surveillance post on the edge of the Barrow Nebula caught a full glimpse of him. It was only 5 seconds of footage before the feed went dead. But in that time, one could see a tall figure in battle-worn human armor, face obscured by an old combat mask, stepping through a corridor filled with smoke. His hand held a curved blade, not standard issue, but personal. Handmade. Ancient. On his back was a sealed pack etched with a child's drawing, maybe added after revival. Maybe older. No insignia. No rank. Just one human. Moving with the certainty of history. And still, Earth said nothing. No press conferences. No claims. No explanations. Just silence. The Council couldn't fight silence. Their weapons needed targets. Their laws needed declarations. But Earth had sent only consequence. And consequence doesn't negotiate. In the dark halls of an abandoned diplomatic relay hub on the fringe of the Tranthea system, a final message was found written in plasma heat across the ceiling. No recording devices remained. No crew survived. But the message glowed with eerie clarity. It read simply: "Your laws failed her. Now she's mine." The necklace had never been just a keepsake. It had been a project between Jaya and her father, something they worked on together during his last assignment rotation. While it looked like a child's toy, It was built on Earth's private encryption tech, the kind the Galactic Council had no access to. The outer shell was silly and cheerful, made to look harmless, but the internal structure held a microreactive transmitter, a biometric lock keyed only to Jaya's heartbeat, and a collapsible data module connected to a directional pulse beacon. It was small enough to go unnoticed and innocent enough to be ignored by alien tech, but clever enough to store 100 terabytes of compressed visual and audio data. Her father hadn't told her what it truly was. She just thought it was fun to build. He called it her flower cat. She didn't know it held the last secure files he'd ever record. He didn't know it would be the reason she was targeted. When the necklace was launched into orbit, the beacon fired once, like a flare in deep space. Earth's sentinels received it within minutes. In the AI vault beneath Pacific Command, red protocols lit up. The child's device had connected. Its checksum logs aligned with a classified ID stream. It began transmitting the last sequence her father recorded. What came through wasn't just a dump of data. It was evidence. Proof that Counselor Tren had initiated a classified back-channel operation designed to sabotage Earth's expansion into neutral trade routes. Not only that, it showed he had ordered shadow contracts with mercenary fleets, using a now dismantled corporate front to intercept, monitor, and if needed, remove any human personnel carrying sensitive information. The plan had been reckless. The execution had been sloppy. But the result had been deadly. Tren had assumed he was untouchable. He believed that once Earth's diplomats were silenced, their carefully structured influence would collapse. He hadn't expected a child to intercept encrypted files. He hadn't expected her to tinker with her necklace's firmware on her own. She had done it on accident, probably out of curiosity, but in the process had triggered a transmission queue that logged every suspicious ping her father received. Every silent call. Every redirected routing signal. The AI on board had done the rest. It didn't even require adult input. The logs were packaged and prepared as an emergency alert. All it needed was a launch. Manticore wasn't aware of these logs. He didn't need to be. His mission had already triggered from the death pattern. But when the data reached Earth, it gave his directive legitimacy. It transformed a ghost into a rightful executioner. The warrior now had names, locations, complicity, and most importantly, a motive with public teeth. If Earth ever wanted to justify what came next, it now had the files to bury every protest. The galaxy wouldn't see this as war. It would see it as overdue retribution. The Council still didn't know this. Not yet. Their panic came from what they didn't understand, not what they did. They didn't know the files existed. They didn't know the girl had outwitted their security nets with the child's toy. What they did know was that every attempt to intercept Manticore had failed. Every trap they set triggered nothing. Every fleet they launched encountered silence, followed by ruin. One ship was found drifting, its crew paralyzed but alive, each one tagged with a neuropulse inhibitor that left them conscious but unable to move. Carved into the deck was the word innocent. A message. Not all were targets. But some were. Counselor Tren grew desperate. He pulled old favors, tried to call in ancient debts. But those who once stood with him began to fall back. The silence from Earth, once mocked, had become something far worse than words. It had become contagious. Worlds stopped answering his calls. Sectors delayed responses. His own assistant resigned. He was becoming radioactive. The others on the council weren't brave enough to remove him, but they weren't foolish enough to stand near him either. Meanwhile, Kalia worked in shadow. She met with the Joint Earth Command via encrypted relay, sharing the full contents of her daughter's device. The evidence was verified, backed up, and duplicated into 6 covert data caches across the solar system. Each one set to release publicly if Earth suffered further unprovoked losses. She didn't want war. She wanted awareness. She wanted the galaxy to know what had been done. And she wanted the Council to know they'd left fingerprints. Their mistake wasn't killing a child. It was assuming the child couldn't fight back. But Jaya had. Not with weapons. Not with politics. With curiosity. With code. With a necklace she thought was a game. Back in deep space, Manticore closed in on his third target. This one was less obvious. Not a counselor, not a general, but a banker. One who had routed the illicit credits that paid for the mercenaries. He lived in a floating palace over a gas giant, protected by elite guards and wrapped in layers of luxury and security tech. But when his guards went to check his suite one morning, they found the doors open. No alarms had tripped. The lights were dimmed. And every portrait on the wall had been replaced with a photo of a laughing child in a gravity garden. In the center of the room was a single chair, and in that chair sat the banker. Alive. Bound. Shaking. On his chest was a recording device. A confession. The data would be uploaded the moment someone tried to remove it. The council scrambled. They tried to contain it. But Earth was already watching. They didn't say anything. They just recorded everything. The files from the girl's necklace were merged with the banker's confession. Patterns formed. Names matched. The news tightened. Manticore moved like a storm just behind the clouds, never fully seen, only felt in the wreckage he left behind. He didn't crave glory. He didn't ask for credit. He simply crossed names off a list. And every time he did, a piece of the council's armor cracked. Back in her hidden chamber, Kalia lit a candle in front of her daughter's photo. She didn't cry. Not yet. Her mission wasn't finished. But for the first time since the explosion, her hands weren't clenched. They rested calmly on the table. Because now the galaxy knew her daughter's name. And soon, they would know her voice. Manticore wasn't just punishing the guilty. He was honoring a promise. That Earth's children were not just protected by soldiers, but by legends. And legends do not forgive. They avenge. The operation was labeled Star Veil and approved in less than 6 hours under Emergency Council authority. It was supposed to be the ultimate deterrent. Dozens of orbital fleets repositioned themselves across the sectors surrounding Sol. Earth's defense line hadn't moved, but the Council interpreted silence as escalation. The idea was to trap whatever weapon Earth had unleashed between transit gates, then strike from multiple angles. But their calculations were wrong. Manticore wasn't a fleet. He wasn't bound to Earth's grid or Earth's protocols. He didn't need permission or command. He moved in a way no machine could predict, because he wasn't following a battle map. He was following memory. And he was already inside. The first sign that Star Veil had failed came from a drone patrol above Europa. It had been deployed to track movement along the ice horizon, looking for any unauthorized transmissions. For weeks, there was nothing. Then one drone went offline. Not destroyed. Not jammed. Just silent. Then another. Then a third. One technician, half asleep at his post, finally reviewed the last feed. There were no shapes. No enemies. Just boot prints across the frozen sheet, leading away from an empty cliffside. No entry points. No ship. Just a void. The technician tried to sound the alarm, but by then, the facility's power grid collapsed in synchronized failure. No weapons fired. No explosives. Just the subtle hum of lights going out, one by one, until only the emergency beacons blinked, helpless in the dark. Back at the council chamber, arguments broke out. The outer factions wanted to sue for peace, offering Earth reparations and open tribunal access. They'd lost too many ships, too many people, and they hadn't seen a single retaliatory attack from Earth's official military. Only whispers? Only wreckage. But Counselor Tren wouldn't allow it. His voice thundered through the hall, spitting claims of Earth's deceit, accusing rival species of weakness and betrayal. He still believed they could overpower one man. One ghost. But the silence in the chamber told a different story. Even the oldest warriors knew better than to chase a shadow in the dark. Especially one that carved its messages with steel. Tren initiated a covert command. He called it the fail-safe. It was an old protocol left from the war with the Brinthak, a species now extinct. The fail-safe allowed a direct strike on any celestial body marked as a potential hostile staging ground. Earth's moon base was marked red. A relic from centuries ago. He sent the order. No vote. No warning. He believed if he destroyed a symbol, Earth would flinch. But instead, something ancient awoke. The moon base had not been silent out of decay. It had been dormant by design. Inside it was not a weapons facility, but a listening structure, buried deep under lunar rock. And buried even deeper within was an array that hadn't been touched in 100 years. A weapon Earth had never fired in war. Not because they didn't trust it, but because they trusted it too much. The moment the strike order activated and the first Council missiles entered lunar orbit, the array came online. The signal was old Earth code, predating most current systems. No override. No delay. The array did not fire on the missiles. It fired through them. A beam of energy so narrow it didn't explode but sliced clean through each projectile, cutting their cores in half mid-flight. No debris. Just dust. Council satellites caught the footage and transmitted it seconds before their feeds died. The silence that followed was not strategic. It was fear. Manticore moved again. Faster now. The final names on his list were not hiding. They were barricaded inside the High Council station on Echelon 9, protected by armadas and shield grids. But he didn't arrive with ships. He came through the debris field, floating in a disabled suit, heat signatures masked, drifting like wreckage until a cleaning drone hauled him inside. That drone was later found dismantled, with its memory core melted. Security logs showed nothing until he stepped out of a shadow in the Council's lower chamber, 30 floors below the main halls. The footage was later scrubbed. But some rumors say he paused in front of a memorial plaque where the diplomat's name was freshly engraved. He didn't touch it. He just stared. Upstairs, Tren had surrounded himself with soldiers. Not Council troops. Mercenaries. He didn't trust anyone anymore. They were armed with the latest alien tech, neural disruptors, gravitational lock rifles, pulse grenades designed to paralyze even armored targets. But when the blast doors to the chamber opened, they didn't see an army. They saw a man in silence, walking forward in a dusty suit with a blade in one hand and something clutched in the other. When one soldier demanded identification, Manticore tossed the object across the floor. It bounced once and slid to a stop at Tren's feet. It was the necklace. The flower cat. Still playing the last image of the girl's laugh. The first soldier raised his weapon. He didn't lower it. He simply fell. No sound. No scream. The others hesitated. And that hesitation was their death. Manticore didn't fight like a human anymore. He moved like pressure. Like inevitability. No wasted motion. No anger. Just execution. And when it was over, only Tren remained. Bleeding. Crawling backward. Trying to speak. To beg. But Manticore didn't speak either. He sat across from him. Unhooked his helmet. Laid the necklace gently on the table. Then stared. Tren's final moments weren't filmed. The Council covered them. Said he died in combat. Said he fought bravely. But those who saw the room afterward knew otherwise. There was no struggle. No broken glass. Just a neat chair, a fallen man, and one word burned into the floor beneath him. Memory. Across the galaxy, broadcasts changed. Tribunals were opened. Council members resigned. And Earth remained silent. Their ships did not move. Their weapons stayed offline. But their message had been received. And for the first time in a generation, the stars listened. Manticore vanished. No transmissions. No signal. Just gone. Some say he returned to Earth. Others say he walked back into cryo, his purpose fulfilled. But those who understand Earth's old ways know better. He's not asleep. He's waiting. Because the last thing he said to Tren, the words never written down but passed through whispers from one shaken survivor, were simple. You killed a child to send a message. So did we. The stars had never seemed quieter. Trade routes once buzzing with traffic slowed to a cautious drift. Patrols from other planets doubled, but not to challenge Earth. They watched from a distance, pretending neutrality while quietly pulling ambassadors, sealing off access lanes, and whispering warnings to anyone who dared ask questions about what had happened at Echelon 9. In every corner of the galaxy, the story had already taken shape, exaggerated and blurred in parts, but with a core truth no one could deny. Earth had answered the death of a child not with war, but with a name. And now that name was everywhere, burned into steel, carved into walls, muttered in the lower decks of every ship with a human flag. Manticore was no longer just a man. He was a memory. A consequence. A signal that Earth, for all its silence, had never forgotten how to strike. The High Council fractured under the weight of it. Those who remained tried to distance themselves from Tren's orders, claiming ignorance, pleading innocence. Some offered reparations in private, others called for inquiries, but Earth responded to none of them. They didn't accept apologies. They didn't demand trials. What Earth had wanted had already been taken. Not by diplomats or fleets or declarations, but by one man with old armor and a blade designed for a war that had never been declared. The galaxy now understood that Earth's strength had never been in its weapons. It had been in its restraint. Until that restraint was betrayed. 1 month after Tren's fall, a small transport vessel arrived on the edge of the Council's communication grid. It bore no insignia. It transmitted no messages. But its hull was coated in a unique carbon signature that Earth used only for diplomatic missions. The Council hesitated, unsure if it was a warning or a final strike. When the ship docked, only one passenger emerged. Kalia. No guards. No entourage. Just her. She walked straight into the council chamber without requesting an audience. No one dared stop her. She placed a single object on the center table, turned, and left. That object was a data crystal. Inside it was a recording from her daughter's necklace, encrypted and time-stamped, showing the exact sequence of events that preceded the explosion. It included the intercepted message from Tren, the altered flight path, the emergency reroute request, the timeline that proved the child's death wasn't an accident. It was targeted, deliberate. The silence in the chamber was not one of debate. It was shame and fear. Kalia didn't wait for their response. She returned to Earth before the broadcast ended. The data was then uploaded to every major network, human and alien alike. The truth could no longer be buried. Earth never issued a threat. They didn't need to. They had let history speak for them. And the galaxy, now aware of what had been done, began to shift. Alliances changed. Contracts were dissolved. Those who had once lobbied to diminish Earth's influence now tried to partner with them. But Earth remained distant. Not hostile. Just unreachable. As if to say, we gave you a chance to know us. You chose to test us instead. As for Manticore, his name was never officially listed in Earth's military registry. There was no record of his return. No funeral. No announcement. But rumors swirled. Some said he had returned to the cryo vault, buried beneath the ice again, to wait for the next betrayal. Others said he had disappeared into the outer colonies, living under a false name, watching from the shadows. One story said he walked into a gravity garden late one night, the same kind where Jaya used to dance, and simply sat on the bench until dawn, then vanished before the staff could ask who he was. All the cameras had been off that night. No footage. Just a security log with a single line recorded manually by a young officer. He smiled like he remembered something. In time, Earth resumed limited communication with its allies. Trade resumed. Diplomats returned to their posts. But the tone was different. Colder. Sharper. Earth had become a reminder, not just of strength, but of boundaries. And across the galaxy, that reminder remained etched into starship corridors, into bunker walls, into the backs of soldier helmets. A single word without a logo. Manticore. The new generation of humans grew up hearing his story not in textbooks, but through cautionary tales and whispered lessons. They were taught not just to be proud of Earth's strength, but to understand the cost of its silence. The children asked why Earth never responded with armies. And the answer was always the same. Because sometimes one man is all it takes. If the man carries memory. Years passed. Memorials were built not just for Jaya and her father, but for all the innocents caught in the shadows of galactic games. The biggest one stood on Europa, at the edge of the ice shelf where the drone had gone silent. It was made from melted hull fragments, and bore no statue. Just a flat surface, etched with the girl's laugh waveform and a single phrase in a language most aliens couldn't translate. But humans could. It read, "We do not forget." The council never fully recovered. A new leadership emerged, less arrogant, more cautious, driven by fear but also a strange respect. They knew now that Earth's patience was not infinite. That their old strategies of control and manipulation didn't work anymore. Earth had changed. Or maybe it had always been like this, and they simply hadn't looked closely enough. In a distant asteroid belt, far from trade routes and surveillance zones, a ship drifted. No registration. No signal. It looked abandoned. But inside, deep in the command deck, sat a single figure, unmoving. The air was cold. The lights dim. The screens off. But if someone had walked close enough, they would have seen the faint glow of an active system in standby. Waiting. Listening. Ready to receive a signal. Not to attack. Not to hunt. But to awaken. And on that man's wrist, beside faded armor and old scars, was a child's bracelet. Worn. Cracked. Still playing a silent loop of laughter. Not because he needed a reminder. But because some memories don't fade. Some just wait for the right moment to rise. And when they do, the galaxy remembers what happens when Earth stops whispering and sends its past to knock on the door. Not as a threat. Not as a soldier. But as a promise.